Let's go.
Hey, what a pleasure to have you on. This is our first kind of trialing this YouTube setup, and I totally appreciate you being here. It's awesome to have you on.
Happy to be here. I think, as they always say, but no, genuinely, it's good. It's exciting. It's obviously exciting. Anything you guys are doing, we've had our eyes on you guys for a while, to be honest. So yeah.
Oh well, dude. So I have a friend of mine who works. He's ex F1 Williams team, and he'd sent through your guys' stuff because he'd been working on scooters in other areas, and I just saw it and I was like, damn, that thing's so sexy. Like, like I've got a boosted rev and I love this space, and so I think a lot about it, and I've been thinking a lot about scooter design and what would work and all that sort of stuff, and I saw what you guys have done and I was just like, that is just a really well thought out product. So I've been very excited for a while to have a chance to talk to you. So look, man, why don't we just go through? So I'd love to hear a bit more about you and your background, and then kind of the story that we got to when we actually, where we got to TAUR.
Yeah. So I guess my background, I always feel like it's not that interesting, but I was working for, I think, around 5 years on electric unicycles, which, if you don't know them, are basically like take a Segway with the two wheels, reduce it to one wheel, and you stand essentially either side like skiing, and they self-balance in the direction of leaning forwards or backwards. And I worked on those for a while, and a lot of other devices which actually didn't come kind of out into the open in public. There were a lot of R&D projects. And through doing that, I ended up being a user of micromobility every day for 5 years. So I like distinctly know how a user feels about the benefits and also like kind of some of the shortfalls of the devices that are available today. And but yeah, today still, even though this was a while back.
Yeah. So when you say you're working on them, is it were you helping design them or?
Yeah, designing them. So there was a group of around a dozen of us engineers, designers, software guys. It was a really kind of cool team. From a variety of industries, everything from your military background to your consumer electronics backgrounds, all coming together to really work on something that you couldn't be familiar with an electric unicycle, right?
Yeah.
As a design team,
it's such a foreign beast.
Where do you start? Really, where do you start?
Yeah.
So it was truly baptism by fire, and but it got me interested. The fundamentals. You've got batteries, you've got motors, you've got a tremendous value proposition with those things, but you also have pitfalls. So like I think that's probably where we can move from what I was doing to the excitement towards the electric scooter space. Was electric unicycles are a little bit weird. Like I made them. I mean, of people who would be excited to talk about electric unicycles, I'd probably put my hand up, but I'd also want to say that I recognize that they're not for everyone. They're a unicorn of devices.
Yeah.
So scooters are very interesting because they bring 90% or 95% of the benefits an electric unicycle can, but without a steep learning curve or probably a little bit less risk and a lower, like, I'm not going to say you have to be really skilled to ride them, because I think anyone could learn if they wanted to, but a kind of a lower level of skill that you don't really have to be special or athletic or anything in order to be able to do it. So yeah,
I'm very excited about the space, obviously, and I still look at electric unicycles and go, like, I like my kneecaps. I like
yeah.
I like other parts of my body, and it still feels, I watch the videos of the guys who go out and do it with those really massive ones, because I think a Yuko now got ones that go like 55, 60 miles an hour, something like that. And it's crazy stuff. And it's so interesting to hear that's, as you say, you kind of get a lot of the benefits, but then it makes it's that next level up of where we think the space is probably going to go. Yeah. So you were working on that in the UK? Yeah,
working on that in the UK here in London. And the design team was a bit distributed, a little bit like now, but before it was cool. And
Yeah.
So it was exciting. We made a lot of progress. We did really cool stuff in software and control systems. A lot of unique parts. it was really an interesting market, but I think fundamentally it cemented itself as a bit more extreme than it was when it started. As you said, we're talking people who are wanting to go 40, 50 miles an hour on a single wheel device. And that's cool. Like if you're into that, power to you. But I don't know how many people are. That's the sad fact of it. I don't know how much growth there is there for that opportunity.
Yeah. There's I remember when the Segway first came out, and I was very excited about it back, when it was called Ginger and they did the unveil, and I looked at it and I showed it to my mum, and my mum was like, that is just the dumbest thing I've ever seen.
Yeah.
And there's something about that form factor of having the lean forward, lean back, which feels intuitive, but I just don't think is mass market. So yeah. Anyhow, look, so you went from there, and what internally for yourself, what was that journey from going, okay, electric unicyclist to I want to design a scooter?
So it's a bit of a fun story. I'll say it quite quickly because the focus as soon as we started making scooters was really throughout, but the journey was funny. One of the engineers I was working with, I hadn't seen him in a while. He'd actually left the company and moved abroad, and he came back. We met up, and he was like, "Oh, I'm gonna go to a Christmas party later." I was like, "Okay," and I went and I met my current co-founder, Richard. We got pretty sozzled, and we basically kind of connected. He's a very bright guy, a lot of engineering experience, was working on electric cars at the time, and was like, "Yeah, I want to do something in the EV space, maybe smaller." And essentially this mutual contact put us in touch, and he was like, "Yeah, you should talk to Carson, because if someone kind of is interested or knows about this space, he's worth the conversation." And anyway, we hit it off, and it wasn't long before we're making prototypes and testing them. I think it's been quite a concentrated journey. We've known what we wanted to do. It's just trying to execute in that focus that's taken time. Yeah.
You chose to go down the route of making a personally owned scooter from the get-go.
Oh, yeah.
So talk me through your thinking as you went, you obviously think you're going, I'm going to design an electric vehicle. You could see probably the sharing space was exploding. Why not go and design for that?
Okay. And I think this, I'm glad you asked the question, because it's an opportunity to probably explain some points which might come across brash if we try to shorten them.
Yeah.
From the outset, we had a belief that people would get the most benefit from these type of devices if they own them. And that's because of the things that they deliver. So if we compare a scooter and a bike, and a bike is something that's great. But let's just compare those. A scooter is much easier to take inside. It's much more portable. It's much smaller. And it's also able to take you, as long as it's been designed for it, a very similar distance within urban areas. So if you move away from the kind of people who are doing it for sport reasons, the Lycra guys, and you move towards your everyday utilitarian user, a scooter can offer so much in similarity as a bike plus more. And when you move towards the sharing model, although you do have an ability to make a huge impact, and to anyone who didn't manage to catch our video, which you guys kindly kind of put on during the micromobility world, the reach and the impact that scooter sharing has had, I don't think anyone could be more thankful for that. But the value proposition is just so different. It's kind of more opportunistic. It doesn't change your life every day, and owning a scooter can.
Yeah, that's it's fascinating that you talk through it like that, because I went from renting a lot of scooters to owning my own, and just going man, this is it's the connective tissue in the city. It goes from being it's going to take me 20 minutes. It's literally anywhere in the city is 5 minutes away from me right now.
Yeah.
Which is pretty amazing as a feeling of how to be around in a city,
It's described I think in some ways which could be thought of as gimmicky, when they're it's like a superpower. But really, when you have a friend that is, let's say 40 minutes by any means of transportation across a city, and you have something that you can literally take one step out of your door and step onto, and it can take you there in half that time, that it's transformative. I don't care who you are. I don't care how cars evolve over the next decade. that's something that's not going to change. It's the certainty of walking, but at 3 times the speed. So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I love, I know, I totally get it. And I think as well, as more and more people we move from, those early gimmicky, well, not even gimmicky, but, the early versions of those scooters, the Segway ES2s and things like that, which were sort of, they're very utility vehicles. It strikes me. I still talk about the Xiaomi Mi 365, which is sort of like the most common consumer scooter that you can buy from Segway, as being the Nokia 3310.
Oh wow, yeah.
Of this space. It's it's the candy bar phone. It's like everyone had one, and you knew it was like, oh, these are useful. I'm gonna have a phone.
Yeah.
But we haven't got to the iPhone. We haven't got to these things, and I can see these beautiful new scooters that are coming along the pipe is getting closer maybe to that. And I don't quite know how that space will play out. We've called it the Cambrian explosion of vehicle experimentation, because there's such a wide design space. Talk me through the scooter. So you've got there's a couple of really nice things about it, which I love. So talk me through each of these features.
Okay, so I guess there's probably a couple fundamentals, starting probably from the ride position. So we chose a side-by-side stance for the ride position, and that was, a lot of it is because pretty much every mainstream vehicle you face forward. Okay, cars, buses, trains, planes. Like everything the driver faces forward. But in scooters, what's kind of interesting is that if you make someone, I can't do it while I'm sitting because I'll definitely mess up where the mic is sat. But if I put my shoulders a long ways, the problem is I can't even turn the same like radius left and right. Like, I mean, genuinely. And you can't see over your blind side. It's like fundamentally, hold on, this doesn't quite add up. Like, why was that the way it was? So we really started there, and that was the beginning of what we did. And then almost immediately, we had some hypotheses about wheel size, and we said, okay, we need to go up in wheel size significantly. From actually at the time, I think there were even 6-inch wheel scooters. Now 8 is more common. We're still 50% larger at 12. And pneumatic, because most bikes, and I think it's great to have bikes as an example to lean on, they use pneumatic tires because you get such great ride. So those are the mechanical fundamentals, I think, of some of what we've done. And then the geometries that we've implemented have meant that you actually get a more stable ride than you get on any scooter. So there's a lot of things that you see immediately, but then there's actually things that you'd only feel by riding it.
Yeah, that's epic. So it's foldable.
Yep.
It has this amazing backlight system, which utilizes the rider, which I just was like, that's genius.
Yeah.
So
that was funny enough. That was in the notes from the beginning. Like we like I said, we knew what we wanted to do. We knew some innovations that we wanted to bring. We knew that. I mean, it's some of these things when you break them down afterwards, it's a little bit more obvious, but when you look at a scooter from behind, the lights are probably 8 inches off the ground. And why are they 8 inches? Because if you have 8-inch wheels and you have a mudguard, where are you going to put the light? In the mudguard. So, okay, well, how can a driver see that if their field of view starts at like a meter high? Like, it's just not going to happen. So then you start coming into, what could we do to increase this visibility? And luckily we landed on some stuff that people hadn't done before, which is exciting. But I think the purpose was more important than the novelty.
That bigger wheel thing, I think, is just so fundamental. Like, we haven't, you see so few scooter companies going that way. But it's the most primary thing for safety. I mean, if you can, so how does it perform when you think, if you're coming into sort of you're not going to hit a curb per se, but you're trying to go over things that are a little bit larger. How does it feel on a scooter?
It's so funny because I always get the impression like people won't believe me because like, why would I, like, am I a good reference for saying how good the product feels? Like it,
how good's your thing?
Like it feels very, very controlled, very smooth, very like gliding, like in terms of, because you're able to square your body and use your knees, you can maneuver the device. Like it's not just your hands anymore doing, it's no longer this, I've got the scooter all through my knuckle grip. It's actually moving your knees and your hips and actually being able to maneuver, much like you can steer a bike with a seat, to be honest. That's probably the best analogy I could think for that. Yeah.
Excellent. Cool. And then, so you've kind of got this very sexy scooter, and I really like it. But the thing I've been most appreciative about TAUR has been right from the get-go, you've just had such a strong brand. And there's a sort of disconnect that I think exists in the scooter world, is that it's full of really, it's super nerdy, it's all, and I think what you've done is nailed that brand brief just perfectly. And yet you seem like an engineer, your co-founder seems like an engineer, not that I have a problem with engineers, but just it isn't oftentimes where they've gone. So can you talk me through the brand journey that you went through in terms of being able to position yourself? And how you thought about that?
I mean, fundamentally, we are super inspired by streetwear and those brands. And it's something that you can't do afterwards. So the product was designed at the same time the brand and all that imagery was done. So, and not actually by the same people. We got some really talented creatives that we've worked with, but all linked through the same people. So there's a fusion. Like, these weren't done like, oh yeah, we sent off and this person did this and then we sent this. And it was like, no, these people all came and worked with us. So they knew the ethos of what we were building alongside how we wanted it to look. And we brought that all together. And I think just the benefit of, being in London, it being like really diverse and having people with a background and culture that we're thinking about that image. We're thinking about beyond just we're going to make a scooter and it's going to be functional. We're thinking like, am I proud to like ride up to my friends and be like, yeah, I showed up on this? Because if I'm not going to ride it, and we don't have a company. So it was really important for us, and it remains that way. And I think we're not doing it for show. We're doing it because like that's kind of our expectation of what we're selling, is that you will be as excited by it on a daily basis as like, there's an aspiration for us as well, that we want you to be really pleased with what you have in the same way that I think people have been of their favorite item or vehicle in the past.
Totally. I mean, it's a totally underappreciated perspective, in my view, that we don't, or that the industry has been until now not focused on this, bluntly, sex appeal of these vehicles, and that there's a but if you look back and go into the automobile industry, like that's how they sold these things, and from the get-go, you kind of had the Model T era, which was all about utility, and you had these things on the farm, into kind of the post-war era where it was all about big fins and all this. I can't wait until we have finned versions of scooters.
It might not be us, but yeah.
No. I know you're not the American style, but it's really interesting and cool to see that. And your point around about the intangibility of it being something you'd want to show up with your friend. I mean, you can't measure those things, and it's just, again, going back to I really appreciate that, because it's just so it's the intangibility of the entire thing. It's the feel, it's the connectivity, it's a superpower.
Yeah.
And oftentimes, Horace, my co-host, will talk about how these things are superpowers. Electric bikes are like a superpower. So the part, we have to be honest, which is this industry it's full of, like
martyrs?
A lot of companies.
Martyrs? Is that the word you're looking for?
Well, yeah. I mean, it was funny. I talked to Joe Kraus from Lime, and I sort of said to him, like, you guys are the first out there. You're the ones deploying scooters on all the streets.
Yep.
But the history is full of this stuff. And he said, yeah, who are the people? Who are the pioneers? It's the ones with all the arrows in their back. And the space it's full of, boosted and boosted rev. Those guys went big on a scooter that didn't play out, and they, $60 million in funding, they went down.
Yep.
Segway obviously tried to do something, didn't work. So how has that influenced your thinking as you've tried to build a company in this space?
Okay, so I just want to rewind and say, like, we probably should put out immediately that we have a massive respect for what Boosted did. And that's both my time at this company and previously. Like, I looked at a lot of the things they did and I was like, wow, that's really cool. Like, I like what they've done. And you've got one. you know,
Yeah.
so you
I
get it.
do. I love it, dude. It's my
Yeah.
favorite. It's my favorite device. I'm so glad they went under. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Huge amount of respect. I agree.
Although this isn't necessarily about, you know, Boosted versus us, I think it's important to remember that Boosted is fundamentally an electric skateboard company. And
Yeah.
I'm going to say this from an interesting perspective, which I hope, like when it's paired with what I mentioned earlier, makes sense. And that's like the same way that I feel about electric unicycles, I feel about electric skateboards.
Yeah.
There's just only so many people, and I'm one of them, who are willing to ride something to work every day that they might just bin it and just end up on the ground. And also are willing to learn that device and, you know, embrace the culture of it or the oddities of it as part of their daily routine. So I feel like, you know, Boosted transitioning into making electric scooters was a really big deal. I don't think people made it out as a bigger deal as they should have, because they're very different target markets. And it's hard, you know. Fundamentally, we started this, to answer your question directly, knowing that, you know, that there were all of these companies that have tried and failed. And I think that that's why, at least from the outside, I can say we did focus so hard on all these different elements. You know, there's no one to say that, you know, we're going to get it perfectly right, but we have tried to be as considered as we could with the design, as we could with the brand, as we can with how we think about, you know, the future and how we serve our customers. Like, all we can try to do is to be as complete as possible, and hopefully that does us well. But yeah, it's a tough one.
I bet.
Yeah.
I bet. That said, you've only got one product.
Yes.
And you have launched with a Kickstarter campaign that has done exceedingly well. So, you know, it strikes me that perhaps you're coming at this from you're de-risking a lot of those steps before you even get to market, in the sense of you've validated these things are going to sell. You've got a relative, you know, I don't know, you don't have massive overheads, etc.
Yeah.
But yeah, so talk me through, because you've got, you know, you're looking to manufacture them. They should be coming out this year, like in the hands of consumers this year. So kind of talk me through that journey. Like, how are you doing that? And then, you know, that process for you.
Yeah. Between 6.5 to 7 days a week. That's how we're doing it. It's been,
yes, welcome to production hell.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah.
I think it's been really interesting for us, doing this during COVID. It's as a weird thing, you know, we're kind of a COVID company, in a sense. The majority of the company's existence has been during COVID than before it. But that hasn't made it easy. That's meant, you know, even though, you know, the engineering team are here now, you know, have been here through there's been snow in London, which is quite rare. And, you know, they've been in every day. They're in on the weekends. And even still, there's only so much we can control. And we've got, you know, COVID going on, we've got Brexit going on. And it's been really interesting to see not just how it affects things that are really global, you know, like supply chain, which has, you know, been a bit of a challenge, but also how they affect things like our partners that we didn't even really think about. It's like, oh yeah, this partner that we work with, half of their workers can't work side by side at the moment, and they're having the same problem that, you know, that a lot of companies are having in the sense that they need to figure out a new way to work. So we're working as hard as we can, but beyond that, we'll have some good news shortly, but there's a lot of struggle, there's a lot of hustle, and we're doing the best we can.
Yeah, absolutely. So in terms of logistics, so you're manufacturing them in a particular, like, can you reveal where you're manufacturing them?
Not entirely, but every product that we're going to release will be going through our UK base. Every product will be assembled by us. And the reasons for that is because we are intently focused on trying to deliver on our promises. And the sheer challenge in trying to make sure that everything's right in times where we've been unable to travel, we've been unable to, in some cases, get prototypes, you know, exactly when we wanted them. I think it's prudent, and maybe the only way you could do it is to really get down and dirty and get involved in that process. And moving on from there, we'll see where it goes. But for the moment, that's how all the product's going to be made.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And then so you get it out into the hands of consumers. You've obviously had pre-orders from a lot of places around the world. How are you thinking about that point where you go from, hey, they're now in the hands of consumers and we need to do support and maintenance? Because I think it's just one of these things that the industry, I don't yet think has nailed it, and I think the company that I respect the most in this space in terms of what they're trying to do has been Vanmoof. But even, anybody who's following the space knows that they've also had a lot of challenges in being able to get that to scale. And being disparate. So,
I don't know if I can speak on how we'll scale that yet, but I think we got a question the other day where someone, one of our amazing backers got in touch and was like, hey, how are you guys going to do this? It must have been a particular part. I can't remember exactly what part they mentioned, but we talked about it internally. And, the day before we had a breakdown of essentially all the different repair procedures and how we handle those as a company. And I think the industry has been plagued by companies that don't have to care after they ship the product.
Yeah.
Okay. And
I think that's very true.
I think that it's necessary in order for the industry as a whole to grow that we move towards at least a system whereby, in the same way that it doesn't matter whether you drive a Peugeot or a Porsche, you can go and get your oil changed. And hopefully everyone's electric soon, and that's something different. But at least right now, for most vehicles, they can get the majority of their repairs done somewhere locally, and that is what we're intently focused on. There's probably going to be a bit of progress to come, but we will have some exciting announcement there. And I think that we look at what companies like Vanmoof have done, and similarly have a lot of respect for where they've ended up. Yeah.
Yeah. And again, the one part that I would say, having spent a lot of time thinking about this for the e-bike space, has been the reason I like Vanmoof and their approach has been the super streamlined. They've only got 2 models. You guys will only have 1 model. Yep. Having a similar, it's about being able to make it that you design for repair from the beginning and all that sort of stuff, which I'm sure you guys are thinking.
Yeah, I mean, we only do one color. We're not the Model T because we do white, but fundamentally that wasn't an accident. Okay. Rich has got a master's in production engineering. We had some heavy discussions. We're doing one color. Why? Because we see the challenge of exactly what you mentioned as something that has to be taken seriously, and it just gets even harder the more SKUs you have.
Have you looked at going to alternative means of getting to market? So, for example, like doing subscription, or being able to buy a bunch of fleets and know that you're going to be able to, because I mean, imagine in a city like London or New York, you could easily lease out 1,000 or 2,000, then you can build up your own kind of servicing and maintenance facilities.
I can't say we've thought about it. As far as like fleets, all I can say right now is that like we're definitely like ownership, direct to consumer through and through. At the moment, I mean, maybe that will change. It all depends on who gets in touch, and maybe some doors will open for us. But I think that that's what we're intently focused on, and everything else is secondary. Yeah.
What's the total pre-order volume at the moment?
So we're still in the hundreds, but that's not through a lack of. So basically, what we're doing now is we're not marketing basically at all. It almost feels like we're supreme, where we've done a drop and we're waiting for a bit, but that's just because we want to fulfill what we've done, and we need to iterate and learn. So we're going to be working kind of on that basis for a little bit, and similarly as I said earlier, like if we can get the rocket fuel we need post that iteration, I think we'll be in the position to really ramp up.
Yeah. And talk me through that. I mean, in terms of ramping up. So, have you raised any capital to date? And then how's that journey been in terms of actually being the company side of things and thinking about the space?
Yeah. All the things that people don't realize take a tremendous amount of effort. We have raised funds. So I think that was kind of necessary to be able to execute to the level that we wanted to. It just wasn't possible. There was no way that we could as much as we'd have liked to be able to just outright bootstrap this company. So we managed to get a good few angels on board at this stage, and I think we're going to be quite quickly looking to raise some institutional rounds moving forwards, because basically it's the size of what we're able to do next. Like, we have the ambitions and we have some damn cool plans to get there, but then we also need to match that with the capital. So yeah, we have raised, and we're going to be continuing that in order to execute on our goals. Yeah.
Yeah. And how, I mean, when did you do your first raise, and then how has that conversation evolved, if it has? I mean, I don't know if you've gone back out to try and raise again or had further conversations with investors, but like, you did it a year ago or so, and to now, how are people thinking about the space, and how's that being perceived?
Yeah, so I guess we raised a smaller amount, like kind of like probably be referred to as pre-seed, more towards the beginning, and that was kind of similarly as I said, we had a lot of what we wanted to do as a kind of not dossier, but kind of like, this is our really forward plans and how we're going to get to it. But the first stage was to be able to build out the concepts and the brand and the entire product of what we're selling in order to be able to go and talk to some more people. So the conversations really changed from, oh, you guys are crazy, you want to do electric scooters, to, oh, electric scooters, these are really a thing now. Yours looks so different to everyone else's, and is, so the conversation has changed, both in terms of from a market perspective as well as from a stage of a company. And I think it's about to change again as soon as we've fulfilled everything that we're doing this year.
There's something really funny, because this is you're the first UK-based micromobility team that I've talked to, because almost all the design and engineering has either been, we've got the Van Nuff and the Netherlands and Swapfiets and stuff, but then most of it's in the Bay Area, or had a couple of groups from Asia. But it's just, in the same way that like a car, how you look at cars and you're like, I can tell which country that was designed in.
Yeah.
It's so culturally relevant.
You can take apart a lot of products and you're like, okay, I can feel what this company might be about. Just looking at them. So yeah, I get it. Yeah.
I mean, it's just so funny to see the London ethos being, or the sort of the UK ethos being put together into a device.
Yeah. I mean, I guess something I probably didn't mention earlier is like, where we work in the same alley, basically, it's a bit hard. Maybe I shouldn't describe it as an alley, but there are a fashion company and a streetwear company. Like, I'm not talking about selling, I'm talking about making. So
yeah, epic.
When you talk about like the ethos of the people around you creatively and what, like how that can influence what you're doing, yeah, it's pretty cool. It's pretty cool. So there is definitely an impact of being in a city that's like hyper global, diverse, young, all of those things. Yeah, fun. And what kind of engineering did you do? I was trained as a mechanical engineer. Cool. And then left when I finished university. I basically immediately started an electronics company. Where we did some really interesting stuff. Sucker for pain, man. Yeah, we did some interesting stuff, but which basically like Google rolled out a product doing what we were doing about 4 years later. And then we tried to sell that to one of the networks, and we got an initial deal, for a volume of units. And then basically when they found out we couldn't do that stuff for Apple phones, it was for the mobile, it was for phones. When we couldn't do the same thing for Apple that we could do for Android, they were like, we're not going to make money. So that deal fell out the window. And then I went from doing almost purely electronics design stuff into Uniwheel, where I was doing basically mechatronics. So we were making motors, we were making our own battery packs, like basically dead in that kind of mix, that hybrid. So I've basically been bouncing between design, electronics, and mechanical work for the majority of post-uni, like I guess 9 years now. No, 9 years now, yeah. Okay, so the UK has decided to ban personally owned scooters,
which is totally preposterous and crazy in my mind. But just talk me through the irony of this. You guys are, you're obviously designing for that use case. They're fine with shared for some reason, but they're not with personally owned. Talk me through how you're thinking about that.
Wow. Yeah. I guess I should have expected this question from the perspective that it's odd. Like, why are you a company making this in a market which isn't legal? The quick answer would be, sometimes the UK is slow on things. We expected that they'd be there already. I think they might have expected that they'd be there already. They're not. It's incredibly frustrating. And we have been behind the scenes trying to see what we can do to push the legislation forward. And also as an example of, what we've done, people will look at it and go, oh, you've just tried to make a nice looking scooter. But I think fundamentally when it comes to like performance, visibility, safety, we've done more than any rental company has ever done for scooter design. And that is like a testament to what we're trying to achieve to make these things viable transport means. That's all we can do at this stage. If we could do any more, we would.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's a part of that story, which is when they come back and write history books about the emergence of micromobility in the same way that they talked about the Mini or whatever, that sort of there's an iconic design. There's always parts of that story which you kind of go like, really? They would think they did that? They kind of did all these things. So hopefully that's part of the triumph, is being able to get over that as well.
Yeah.
And then let's go forward 5 years. You've got a bunch of these in production. You're obviously starting to look like, what does success look like for TAUR?
I think the success could be measured in a couple of ways. Obviously, it's important that we're a viable company. It's important that we're able to continue to grow as a team, as a company, to firstly, to be around, to reference some of the things you said earlier, is like, that's the first mark. It's like, okay, if we're here in 5 years, we're probably doing well. I think. Maybe that's like presumptuous, but I would say like, if you're around with the ethos that we have about product and we're still connecting, we're I think we'll be in a good place. But that's not it. I think that we expect to be at the forefront. We expect to push people's expectations, not just of a product, but of experience, of service. Will we be the biggest player in terms of sales in the market? No. I think that would be unrealistic, but I think that maybe this isn't a good example, but we still talk about Segway, right? And that company, I guess they're probably 20 years old now. They were 20 years old. They're still a name in popular culture. You can say Segway to a kid these days and they know what it is. So I think the ultimate goal for us as a company would be to be amongst that kind of that legendary status where as a brand you've made enough of an impact in a space that people, you're synonymous with it. I think that would probably be something special.
I could see it the other way, which is that everybody decides to copy you and forward facing becomes default.
Yeah, that would be.
And that's how you succeeded.
That would be something. I mean, I guess I can't honestly jump up and down at the prospect of everyone copying us as being something exciting, but I think it would probably be a good thing in the sense that if people realize that it's better and they try it, and that's something that it's been hard to do in COVID, is to get it in front of people who aren't us, to prove to you that we're not gassing, like, no, really, it is really good. And that could change people's perception. And then if that does change the industry towards a safer design for everyone, and it makes it more viable as a vehicle, it's a net win. I mean, we do really want the market to grow. And I guess fundamentally something that's important to say is that our goals are it's not just about us as a company. I think that we hope scooters continue to grow at the trajectory they are. And I think that there are some fundamental things that no one's talking about when it comes to really the viability of scooters as a micromobility tool, which sets it apart from everything else. Yeah.
Oh, no. Well, let's just do that. What are those?
Oh, so...
what are the things that nobody's talking about?
Yeah. Sorry. I think that...
No, it's all good. No, I'm loving it.
No, I think that... if we were to take transportation, right? So micromobility is a portion of transportation as a whole. And we were to say, well, what transportation is active transportation and what's passive? In the best cases, and let's ignore Amsterdam because I think they're a phenom that we would all applaud and be proud of, but they're not the norm. I think in most cities, you're looking at probably something 95 to 5% active versus passive. So what that tells you is like, okay, if everyone's jumping up and down and yelling about e-bikes are cool. We like bikes. We like exercise. But if 95% of the global transport day-to-day industry is passive, not active, what does that mean for scooters? So there's a fundamental thesis there. Like I remember reading about Horace and some of the stuff that you guys were saying in terms of the unbundling, and then thinking about everything from a bit of a higher up. And I was like, wow, there's some missing parts here. People don't really want to exercise to get to work most of the time. They don't want to sweat. They don't want to have to get a change of clothes. That is a lifestyle change. For us, we're offering you something that is going to drastically improve your life, is going to save you money, and doesn't really require much of a lifestyle change. Like, why wouldn't that blow up?
Yeah, this is so funny. Horace and I really disagree on e-bikes. Horace is like, everything is going to be the e-bike, and you know, this is going to be the escalator of our time. Everybody will ride it. And then there are going to be people who, you know, he gave the analogy, which I really liked, which was, you know, there are people who ride escalators, and then there are people who take the escalator and walk up the escalator. And what kind of person are you? You know, it's the people who walk up the escalator who are going to be the people who ride e-bikes. I'm like, yeah, there are a lot of people who just go like, oh yeah, sweet, I'm going to go stand on an escalator and get ridden up this hill. And I fundamentally think that they will attract different kinds of people. But I as someone who owns a scooter and just like realizes how much more capable it is on either end. You don't have to, I can take it into any, you know, I go to somewhere and I can like roll it inside and nobody cares, you know. It's just the overall aspect of the experience, end to end, in terms of storage and everything else. I still think scooters just have it over e-bikes at the moment. But yeah, I think that there's also this other design, the interesting design space, I think, is also the heavy micromobility. So the stuff that's 100 kgs to 500 kgs, which I still don't think has really been explored properly.
Yeah, it's a hard one. It's a hard one because like you're up against a whole new set of design constraints. You're trying to bring the utility of a vehicle. And the question is what is it more important to, lower cost or size? I think that's a really tricky one. And, you know, the amount of vehicles which we've seen that are a little bit odd and like in that 100 to 500 space, I think that it's just so hard to make something normal in that category that is really palatable and desirable. And hopefully we see something. I think that would be really cool.
Yeah, absolutely. Dude, well, look, this has been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for taking the time.
Oh, thank you, really.
And for folks who are joining us, the plan is hopefully for this micromobility podcast / show style thing to be a bit more of a frequent occurrence. But yeah, I'm just stoked that we were able to make it happen. And Carson, so appreciate. I love your work. I've been so impressed with it right since the get-go. So I appreciate you being the first on.
Yeah, well, it's not mine. Thanks to the team. I mean, everyone's hustling, so I don't want the credit to be on me. Thank you very much for having us. Like, we're honored, and you know, Viva Micromobility. We want to see you guys like continue to grow and the industry to continue to grow. So